After surviving a car accident, Emma developed a rare case of memory loss. Her brain could only retain the last 3 days. Everything before that was erased. And the night Daniel Carter was murdered, a massive void in Emma's mind. Defending her in court was Lucas Bennett, a seasoned attorney who knew this case would be a nightmare. The public had already declared Emma guilty, convinced that she was a cold-blooded murderer. But Lucas's instincts told him something was off.
Emma, stay calm. What do you remember about that night? Even the smallest detail could help.
I don't remember, Lucas. One moment I was at home and the next, the police were arresting me.
All right, if you can't remember, we'll find a way to make you remember.
A radical idea forms in Lucas's mind. They need help from Emma's psychiatrist, Dr. Robert Hayes. Dr. Robert Hayes had been Emma's therapist for years and was an expert in memory loss. If anyone knew her past better than she did, it was him. Lucas persuades Emma to undergo hypnosis in an attempt to recover her memories of that night. The courtroom turns eerily silent as the session begins. Tension thickens as Emma's voice rises in panic.
Someone's there. I was in the house, but Daniel wasn't alone.
Who was there, Emma? Can you see his face?
Emma's eyes snap open. Her heart pounds in her chest.
I don't know, but someone else was there. A man, and he terrified me.
The courtroom falls into stunned silence. That night, Emma and Daniel weren't alone. But who was the third person? She still couldn't remember. The prosecutor is skeptical of Emma's statements under hypnosis. But Lucas Bennett is after something else. Throughout the case, he has felt like something is missing. Is Emma's memory loss an advantage or a trap? As Lucas goes through Daniel Carter's phone records, a detail catches his eye. Just 30 minutes before the murder, Daniel made a call. The number? Dr. Robert Hayes. Lucas narrows his eyes at the screen, curiosity growing. Why would a psychiatrist be calling his patient's husband right before he was murdered? The courtroom is packed. Lucas tightens his grip on the file in his hands and steps forward. He turns to the judge.
Your Honor, I'd like to call Dr. Robert Hayes to the stand.
A murmur spreads through the room as Dr. Hayes calmly walks to the witness stand. He adjusts his tie, a slight smirk on his lips. Lucas wastes no time.
Dr. Hayes, you called Daniel Carter shortly before his death. What was the nature of that conversation?
That was purely a coincidence, Mr. Bennett. We were discussing Emma's treatment.
A coincidence, you say? Then tell me, Dr. Hayes, is it also a coincidence that your fingerprints were found at the crime scene?
The air thickens with tension. A cold silence blankets the room. The jurors shift uncomfortably. The public gasps, whispering frantically. For the first time, Dr. Hayes' confident smile falters.
Mr. Bennett, are you prepared to substantiate these claims?
Lucas doesn't hesitate. He slams a forensic report onto the desk.
That this is the official autopsy report for Daniel Carter. It states that 4 different DNA samples were found in the victim's home. 2 are expected, Emma's and Daniel's. But the other 2? Can you guess who they belong to?
Dr. Hayes' jaw tightens.
It could be mine. I have been to my patient's house multiple times.
No, that would make sense. But here's the problem. Your fingerprints weren't found in Emma's room. They were found in the kitchen on the blood-stained counter. Care to explain how that happened?
A ripple of shock spreads through the crowd. People lean in, whispering, stunned. The judge raises a hand for silence.
Order in the court. Mr. Bennett, proceed.
Lucas locks eyes with Dr. Hayes.
Dr. Hayes, I'm going to ask you directly. Were you inside that house on the night of the murder?
This is absurd. I was at home that night. I can't prove it. But the fact that you're even suggesting this is ridiculous.
Lucas tilts his head, studying him. Then he pulls out another document.
That's interesting because security footage from your home tells a different story. Your building's front entrance camera recorded you leaving at 10:40 p.m. and returning at 11:15 p.m.
Lucas pauses for effect.
Daniel Carter was murdered at 11:05 p.m. So, Dr. Hayes, if you weren't home, where exactly were you?
A heavy silence falls over the courtroom. Dr. Hayes glances around, looking for a way out. His hands tighten around the stand. For the first time, a bead of sweat rolls down his temple.
I was at home, Mr. Bennett. Stop wasting the court's time with baseless accusations.
Lucas lets out a small chuckle, as if he just won a game of chess.
Then why are you lying, Dr. Hayes?
A wave of gasps and murmurs sweeps through the crowd. Dr. Hayes avoids Lucas's gaze. He knows Lucas won't let this go. The judge bangs his gavel.
We are taking a 10-minute recess. The recent revelations could shift the direction of this trial. Court will reconvene shortly.
Lucas leans back, never taking his eyes off Dr. Hayes. Emma, sitting in the defendant's seat, is shaking, unable to process what's unfolding. This case is on the verge of breaking wide open. But Lucas has a feeling something is still missing. And maybe, just maybe, the biggest revelation has yet to come. Lucas digs deeper into Dr. Hayes' past and uncovers a disturbing truth. Dr. Hayes had a history of unethical experiments on patients suffering from memory loss. He didn't just treat them, he manipulated their memories. Now Lucas knows exactly how to end this trial. Emma is escorted into the courtroom. The weight of the accusations against her still weighs heavily on her shoulders. Lucas stands ready to strike the final blow.
Emma, did Dr. Hayes ever use hypnosis on you?
Yes, but he always said it was for my own good.
Lucas turns to Dr. Hayes, his eyes burning with accusation.
Dr. Hayes, I believe you manipulated Emma's memory. Care to enlighten us?
Dr. Hayes shifts in his seat, his hand trembling slightly.
This is ridiculous.
Lucas doesn't hesitate. He reaches into his briefcase and pulls out the final piece of evidence. A confidential report, a document proving that Dr. Hayes conducted memory-altering experiments on Emma. Dr. Hayes' face turns ghostly pale.
I just wanted to protect her. She didn't know what Daniel was doing to her.
The courtroom erupts in whispers. The judge leans forward, eyes sharp.
Dr. Hayes, are you making a confession?
Dr. Hayes suddenly snaps. His voice rises. His mask shatters.
I protected her. Daniel was hurting her. That man deserved to die.
The room falls silent. The real killer was never Emma. It was the man who had been controlling her mind all along. Dr. Hayes is arrested on the spot. In a final moment of desperation, he confesses everything. Emma is finally free, but freedom feels heavier than she imagined. She turns to Lucas, her voice barely above a whisper.
All these years, I trusted him. I thought he was helping me.
Lucas sighs, his voice gentle but firm.
Sometimes the greatest danger comes from those closest to us, Emma.
The judge delivers the final verdict.
The defendant, Emma Carter, is found not guilty of all charges.
The courtroom erupts in applause, but Emma doesn't celebrate because one question still lingers in her mind.
Am I truly free?